Okay, so now let's get into specific standards and specific topics here for specific titles for you. Coming back to economics, we're going to start there because we've already talked about economics. We're going into a new standard though. It shows this is slightly out of order. That's my bad. We're talking about E2, which is understanding the components of an economic system, those producers, those distributors, those consumers. We have goods, we have services, we have natural, human, and capital resources. And these two stories are simple, they're short, and they are really beautiful for explaining in two different areas, in two different times, two different geographical regions in two different times. Both of these stories focus on people using natural resources, human resources to create food, which is beautiful. So within the Tortilla Factory, that's a Gary Paulson. If you're familiar with his books, very short. Obviously, they're making tortillas. I think originally they recognized that they were originally made from corn. I believe they are made from flour in the book. Pancakes. Pancakes is from the guy who wrote The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And Jack wakes up and he's super hungry and he wants pancakes, but he lives on the farm. So he has to milk the cow to get the milk and thresh the wheat to get the grain and, go see the chickens to get the eggs. So it's a really different view on what it takes to make breakfast compared to what our students experience in modern times now. I think that can also be great. These two stories are fantastic to compare and contrast. In fact, if you look at the resource guides for each of them, I have included the other book as well as a Venn diagram graphic organizer for you to compare and contrast. There's also within each of those resource guides a great video called The Perfect Breakfast that is from the St. Louis Federal Reserve Econ Lowdown program. And it just talks about a kid in Florida who wants syrup for his pancake and a girl in Maine who wants orange juice for breakfast. So it's another way that those resource guides can really add in some supplemental materials to just make it engaging and take something as small as 10 minutes and you could watch both of these videos and have a discussion. So love those two. Sticking with economics, but going back to those E1 standards that we were really focusing on at the beginning with our scarcity, allocation, and opportunity cost. So here are 5 titles that really key in on the fact that people have wants and needs. We have to make choices between them and that our personal experiences are always going to impact our choices. We have, if anyone's familiar with any of these books, I would love for you to just mention it and let us know. But I know Milady and I both really love A Chair for My Mother and A Bike Like Sergio's, as well as Tia Isa Wants a Car. And these 3 books are part of our Spanish bookshelf, meaning these titles are published in both English and Spanish, and that we have accounted for that in the resource guide. So within the Spanish bookshelf, it's the same format as what I showed you with Wilma's Way Home, but we will include a read aloud from a heritage Spanish speaker, as well as at least one equitably translated bilingual lesson in English and Spanish, meaning students could participate in both. So that is a focus. We know that many of our students are bilingual, many of our students are multi-language learners, many of our students speak Spanish. So that is one thing that we do focus on. Both Milady and myself are both bilingual and biliterate. And so that's one of the reasons why we love these books so much. But A Chair for My Mother is about a family, is a little girl, a mother, and a grandmother whose house burns in a fire and they lose everything. And their saving goal is for a chair. They just want a nice chair to be able to sit in. Save It, the middle book there, is a part of a series set in Bunnyland. Each of the stories feature a different bunny sibling and talk about, obviously this one's about saving. This bunny is earning money babysitting, earning carrots babysitting, because in bunny land, carrots are used as money, which, as a side note, would be a great way to have that conversation on what should be the qualities of something we use as money. What could be the problems with using a carrot instead of a dollar? And depending on, the age of the student, so I think that could be a very engaging conversation. But, the money has to make choices between, am I saving for something I really want, or do I want to go to the movies, which is what I really want? A bike like Sergio's, I can't say enough about this book. He finds $100 bill on the ground, and what he wants to do and what he needs to do with it are two very different things. And he comes from a house where they are a needs house, not a wants house, which some of you or some of your students may be able to connect to. And I think the story, so much social emotional learning and development in a bike like Sergio's. Lily Learns About Wants and Needs is again part of a series from Cloverleaf Books, but it's a great short read as Lily goes shopping with her dad to figure out the difference between a want and a need for some of our younger students. And then, of course, Tia Isa, she is saving for a car, while at the same time, her niece lives with her. The niece is the narrator of the story. And at the same time, they save for the car, they're also sending money abroad for family members that they hope can join them someday. And so they're looking at that aspect of wants and needs and how to allocate the scarce resources that they have to achieve this great goal of wanting a car, but also keeping in mind the bigger goal of taking care of their family. Any of these would be a great way to introduce any kind of lesson on wants, needs, opportunity cost. Cool. And I am on track here. I think we're going to be good. Okay, so now we're going to go into the history standards, which I haven't talked about yet, but within those, like we said, the social studies standards have 5 domains. Within the history standards, I can say we hit 2 I'm confident we hit 2. We understand and analyze causal factors that have shaped major events in history and understand that there are multiple perspectives and interpretations of historical events. So some of the historical context that we're talking about here, within Wilma's Way Home, we're looking at the forestry location of Native people. That is something that Wilma experiences as a child. And a lot of her story is about finding ways to connect with her culture in a way that empowers her. We also talk about slavery and the plight of the enslaved people through the secret garden of George Washington Carver, who many people are familiar with his story. He is credited with inventing peanut butter, but really he was an incredible scientist, and talks about his story of utilizing the natural resources around him and investing in his human capital to achieve a lot more than anybody believed he could achieve in his lifetime. The Hidden Figures is pretty, has a lot of name recognition because of the movie. This one was actually featured as our book of the month this month, which I'll talk about later. But Hidden Figures, obviously the true story of 4 Black women in the space race. But they're talking about segregation. They're talking about having to work in a segregated workplace. And you can really dig into, and I know Mary has, in fact, dug into the social emotional impact of that, considering their commitment to their profession, their commitment to achieving their dreams, and how they did that within a segregated workplace. Fantastic story. And then we have Uncle Jed's Barbershop, which talks about segregation. We talk about the Great Depression. We're talking about what other historical context? There's one more in there and it's just, I'm blanking on it right now. But Uncle Judd's Barbershop, if you're not familiar with this story, is absolutely incredible. Again, told from the point of view of the niece who narrates. Everyone has a favorite relative, and hers is her Uncle Jed. She comes from a family of sharecroppers. We talk about his willingness to barter and trade for his services as a barber, as the only Black barber in the county. The niece, Sarah Jean, she experiences the effects of segregation when she's sick and has to go to the hospital and has to wait until the white patients have been seen. So really just, he loses all his money in the Great Depression. He perseveres through so many things to achieve his dream. I actually had the pleasure of reading this book in second and third grade classrooms this year. And it just, again, proved to me how amazing a story can be and just connecting with kids so quickly because they all were invested in the story by the end. So these are 4 books that are all about investing in your human capital, honestly, all about pursuing dreams and goals through employment, through, again, that human capital side. All of them focus on utilizing productive resources to, better themselves in their future. I love these titles. I think they're fantastic. But that's probably pretty clear at this point. Next set, still sticking with this standard, this history standard. I got one more set